These unconventional times require unconventional conversations. Listen in as your host, Richard Gordon, engages in one-on-one conversations with numerous leaders, elected officials, politicians, and others to learn what's happening in your state, on the Hill, and across America. Now, here's the host of Unconventional Times, Richard Gordon.
This is Unconventional Times, and I'm your host, Richard Gordon. You know, the educational system in this country is truly in flux. Parents are demanding a greater say in their children's education than ever before. You know, there was a time when it was just common that everyone sent their kids to the local public school. Sure, there were parochial schools and some prep schools and some other types of schools, but by and large, everybody, the vast majority of people sent their kids to the local public school. That's changing. People want more say. People want to be more involved. People want to make sure that their kid gets the best education humanly possible. This is a subject that's been of great interest of mine for many years when I was in government, something I worked on very closely and something I care very deeply about. So there are many schools, especially private schools, that are out of the reach of many, many parents because of the cost. And this is especially true for parents who just don't have the resources to pay for it. So this leaves under-resourced students with actually no choice about where to go and creates an educational choice disparity between those that have the money and those who don't. It also raises the question, is there real choice if it's only for people who could afford it? And that's what where my guests today come in, and that's going to be the subject of our conversation today. Greg Beadles is the founder and driving force behind Arete Scholars Fund. He is also, by the way, the president of the Atlanta Falcons, which, if we have time, we'll talk about a little at the end. And then Arthur Dupre is the president of Arete Scholars and has a very long history, for someone that young, has a very long history of supporting students in their quest for a better education. Gentlemen, welcome to Unconventional Times. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Richard.
Greg, can I start with you? Since you're the driving force and started this whole thing 15 years ago, first of all, congratulations on the anniversary. I understand this is the 15th year, which is quite an accomplishment. But let me start with you. How'd you come up with this idea? How'd you first think of this? What did you see that was missing out there in the educational system? And why did you feel a need to step in and try to fix that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm a co-founder, so it wasn't all just me. In particular, one of my best friends and I co-founded Arete, as you just mentioned, back 15 years ago. And really that came through, we were also co-founding board members of a private school, a classical Christian school. And in offering that to our community here in Georgia, we found a lot of families, single moms that were interested in the type of education that we were offering as an option to other things that were out there, but they just didn't have the means. They didn't have the resources to make it available. And many of those were very heartbreaking for us to hear the stories that they wanted to be in this type of school, this type of education. So that was really an early impetus for us to start digging in and looking at how can we help whenever someone doesn't have the resources to choose something that works better for their child than the option that most have, which is public school, which does work well for the majority of folks and needs to. We need public schools. They've got a big job to do, but for some children, it's just not the best for them.
So Arthur, explain to me exactly how that works. I mean, it's makes a lot of sense to me, and I sort of understand it. But why don't you explain to folks who are listening how this works and how you make it work on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Well, as Greg alluded to, you have, and as you mentioned in the opening, you have a large subset of parents that are looking at their children and they're saying, you know, this model of education, it's not one size fits all. Every child has unique learning needs, has unique abilities. And so to be able to tap into that, you have to find the right environment for them. Well, unless you are a parent that lives maybe in a more affluent zip code, or you have that economic mobility to move to the best school districts, or if you have the discretionary income to be able to support your child's education if there's a tuition cost, then you don't really have a choice, right? So unless you have that, you don't really have a choice, as you mentioned. And so for Arete scholars, and part of Greg and Derek's vision going back 15 years ago was you shouldn't have to win the lottery of life to be able to have access to an education that allows you to thrive, not just academically, but holistically. And so Arete is really that hand up. We are able to pick these families up financially, help them stand on their own 2 feet. We provide tuition assistance to the school of the parent's choice. The parent has skin in the game, which is absolutely critical and empowering in a lot of ways. And then the school that they choose is really working alongside them too to make that school not just accessible, but affordable. So it really becomes this great 3-way partnership between Arete, the partner school, and the family. And it's all funded through the generosity of people in our community.
So let me dive into that a little bit. And if for either of you, please jump in. You said the parents have skin in the game. What exactly does that mean in this context?
I'll start out, Arthur, then I have you. We're refreshing some of our latest demographics on the families that we serve. So I'll have Arthur kind of hit those. And when you hear this from Arthur, it's a partial scholarship in most cases that we're able to offer. And the families are still paying thousands of dollars per year per student with very, very low resources because they care about their children just as much as all the rest of us do. They want to see them have opportunities just as much as we do. And so for them, the sacrifices that they're making on a percentage basis of total income and things like that, it just gets me every time that I see it, how much skin they do have in the game. So Arthur, do you mind just kind of a profile of the families, or Richard?
And before we get there, I just want to be really clear on something you said, Greg. So what is the average amount that someone pays in? Because I thought you said they pay thousands, but I'm just curious, like private school is extraordinarily expensive around the country. I'm just curious, like, first of all, who are these people, basically
Mm-hmm.
demographically, which I think, Arthur, you're about to get into. But I'm very interested to know for your average scholar, how much their family has to put in.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. And it's a great question. So, number one, looking at who does Arete exist to serve? It's those people that have been on the margins, the people that have been neglected, the people that are in significant financial need. And so the average profile, if you will, of an Arete family is you have a household size of 4 people, oftentimes a single parent, many times a single mom, raising 3 kids. She's making $46,000 and change before taxes. And she wants to be able to send 3 children to a private school because she believes that's the best opportunity for her kids to be able to thrive academically and holistically. And as we know, that math doesn't math, right? And when you look at the average scholarship that Arete is able to provide, it hovers between $4,000 to $5,000, depending on what grade level, which then goes to your question about the skin in the game that our families have. The average kindergarten through 8th grade partner school that Arete has, the tuition hovers with fees around $7,000. Could be less, could be more, but about $7,000. And when you're looking at the average high school, again, tuition and fees, you're looking over $12,000, right? So in K through 8, we're providing on average about $4,500, maybe a little bit less than that. In high school, closer to the $5,000 range. So when you look at the cost, you look at what Arete is able to provide. Some of the schools are able to provide some internal financial aid to soften the financial burden to those families. But oftentimes, especially on the high school level, you have families that are coming out of pocket thousands of dollars per child if they have multiple kids in that high school. It's a little bit less on average in the elementary school or middle school, just with the lower tuition cost. But the reality is that for an Arete family, you have parents that are paying sometimes thousands of dollars, as Greg said, oftentimes over $1,000 for sure. And what's beautiful about that, Richard, is that when a family has skin in the game, it transforms the entire dynamic from one of maybe entitlement to more of empowerment. There's a dignity, there's a pride when a family is paying into and investing in their child's education. And not only are they more invested in it, they're the accountability, staying on top of their kids and saying, "Hey, how are your grades?" and making sure that they're doing their part. Their kids are, but also the community service and volunteerism that you see from Arete families in their schools. It's off the charts. So it transforms the entire dynamic when they have that skin in the game.
Is the amount that a parent contributes proportionate to their income? So, for example, if you make, I don't know, 30,000 as opposed to 46,000, do you pay less, or how does that dynamic work?
It's really between the partner school and the family. Arete really is that hub, right? We are the connector, and we provide that initial capital and access. From there, that's where that partnership really thrives, because the family and the school work together to find the financial arrangement that works. And so oftentimes, if you do have a situation where a family is in severe financial need beyond the scope of maybe the median income family that we mentioned earlier, that school will be able to provide more assistance. Someone like me, where you can do work study when you're in high school, there are ways to be able to address the costs and make that education a reality for that child.
So, where are you located now? What states do you operate in?
We're operating in Georgia and Louisiana at this time. They both have kind of similar programs in the state that we operate from. Arthur can talk about, some things that we're looking at in the future in expansion. One point on the last thing I just want to be sure we don't miss is that our scholarships are portable for the families. And
Meaning what? They can move from school to school?
meaning they can move from school to school. And so that aspect, and then also the fact that they're spending their own hard-earned money, we say that they vote with their feet. And so there's this competitive marketplace aspect of, we want to make sure the school is meeting the needs of our children. And so there's a high accountability with these scholarships, that they can take it and move somewhere else if it doesn't meet their needs or the school's failing their child in any way.
Well, that raises a lot of questions. It raises the question of, first of all, who picks the school? How does someone become a partner school with you? Arthur, you had mentioned a few times the phrase partner school. How does someone become a partner school? And is there a sense of accountability? For example, you give these scholarships, I think you said $4,600. The child goes to school. Is there accountability in the sense of, does someone follow their progress? Does someone see how they're doing? If they're not doing well in a school, do you intervene? Who's driving the boat here? Is it you? Is it a parent? How does that all work?
Yeah,
Is that enough questions in one question?
yeah.
I was
Let me.
gonna say,
Let me
that's a lot. That's a lot to unpack,
hey,
there, Richard. But Arthur's
that's
got
all
it. He
right.
can do that.
Yeah, well, Richard, you may have to steer me back on course. I joke with people. I say my initials are ADD, and I'm the poster child. So if I miss something, please reel me back in. But first of all, going back to the partner school concept. So there are a set of criteria to be able to become a partner school. I won't belabor you with the details, but there's an approval or accreditation piece. So there's a foundational level of quality that is universal across the education system. So it's usually approved or accredited by a state agency or beyond, right? Sometimes national accrediting agencies as well. But quality also is determined by the parent. It's in the eye of the beholder, right? Because it's more than just an A-rated versus C-rated. Quality is a spectrum, right? And so whether it's safety, morals, and religious values that are instilled, there are so many different ways to define quality, again, within the eye of the beholder, the parent, the customer here, which then goes to one of your other questions. And Greg nailed it. This is the bedrock of this is the free market idea of competition, where the parent is in charge. The parent drives this. We give them that scholarship, and it is the ladder for them to climb out of the predicament that they were in, to look around and scan the horizon of opportunity for their children, and then to vote with their feet, as Greg said, And what happens is when you give a parent a choice, just like anything in our economy, whether it's what doctor you go to, a car you drive, where you're going to get lunch that day, we have choices in nearly every single aspect of life. Education is one of those that we don't if you're a poor family. Yeah. And that's why Arete exists. So when you give that parent access and you give them a choice, it creates competition. And then what happens? The public school, the charter school, the parochial school, everybody has to compete for that child because they now have a choice. They have the resources. And with that competition, the quality of the product goes up and all boats rise. And that's really the bedrock and one of the foundational philosophies of this movement, of our program, is to give parents the very best opportunities to make everybody compete for their dollars.
So, Greg was just about to ask you, and I cut you off with my 90 questions. Greg was just about to say to you, okay, we're in Louisiana, we're in Georgia, and Arthur, why don't you talk about our future plans? So, Arthur, why don't you talk about our future plans?
Sure. Well, let me go back to something real quick. You can't dream about the future and look to the future unless you're leaning on your history and where you came from. And you asked Greg about he and the co-founder Derek Monjuri's dream 15 years ago, but it's important to remember it was an idea, right? This started as a simple idea, but when you have people that are filled with passion, conviction, and a belief that we are on this earth to do something bigger than ourselves, to serve others, to lift other people up, then magic can happen. And so for 15 years, we've had people come along our side, community partners, schools, families, Greg, Derek, and others that have been the backbone of this program and this movement. So it started as an idea and just a handful of kids on a scholarship and really a shoestring budget trying to make this thing. I liken it to like MacGyver. We need toothpaste, bubblegum, and dental floss to make this thing go. It's generated over $100 million in critical financial aid, over 25,000 scholarships, and countless lives changed. So that's where we came from. That's the fruit that has been generated in 15 years. But then you look to where we are as a society, and there's so much need that's still out there. And so our DNA is that the very definition of Arete is a life that's filled with virtue, courage, excellence, but really fulfilling your potential. So if we're going to fulfill the very definition of Arete, our DNA, to fulfill the potential of this organization, then we can't stop. And so our future is a relentless pursuit of trying to serve those that are in greatest need. And as you look at our expansion and as we look at what we're dreaming about, there's a couple of things I'll mention just really high level. One is, what other communities need this? Well, there are communities all across the country that need this. We can't be everything to everybody right away. But as we grow methodically and intentionally and look at where we can have the greatest impact, we're in Georgia, we're in Louisiana, all across those states, but also we're expanding into Alabama, where there's tremendous opportunity, tremendous need out there. We have a federal tax credit scholarship that I'm sure we'll talk about later that now opens the door to help countless more families in other communities across the country as well. That's a tremendous tool in our toolkit to be able to create very quick impact. But then lastly, we would be foolish to say, hey, we gave a kid a scholarship, we pat him on the back and said, we did it. That kid is saved and signed, sealed, delivered. The reality is that these kids need way more than just access to a better school. They need more opportunities, more resources to be able to flourish in every aspect. And so when we sat down and we really listened to families, we listened to our schools, we listened to our community partners, we realized there's a lot more opportunity to create value in the lives of these kids and these families beyond a scholarship, which is huge, but there's a lot more opportunity there. And so very quickly, there's 4 other buckets or initiatives that we're pursuing in a phased approach. It's academic support, like literacy, ACT prep courses for kids that are first time in their families generationally, often looking to go to college. And there is college and career pathways, helping these kids think about and discern, what does my future look like, and helping them dream bigger in a way that maybe they haven't before, and curating pathways of opportunity through our network. One of our definitions is about character. It's about virtue and a life of excellence. So we're facilitating opportunities for these kids to grow in virtue, to grow in leadership, to be the great leaders of tomorrow that we really need today. And then lastly, it's helping sustain that success beyond the graduation stage. So whether it's financial literacy or just creating a network, a community for these kids, where being an Arete Scholar is not a scarlet letter. It's a badge of honor. It's something you take pride in. That is, a big part of what we're building out for these kids, for these families, where, again, it goes beyond the scholarship, beyond the graduation stage, and hopefully carries them through life.
It sounds of the 25,000 kids who've gone through the program that you keep in touch with a lot of them and see
We
them
do,
grow and
and
develop and go to college, I guess, over time. If you get the
correct.
scholarship once, do you get it forever?
It's really based on need. So it's a great question. It's based on need. So we continue to track our families, and so long as they stay within that scope of financial need, then they'll continue to get the scholarship. Obviously, our hope is that they will accelerate their earning power. They'll get better jobs. They'll advance their career, and there won't be a need for this anymore. And guess what? There's another kid, another family that we can turn around and hand that scholarship to. So our hope is to be able to help these people along their pathway and accelerate that trajectory of growth and opportunity. But to the extent that they need this scholarship, Arete will be there.
Hey, Greg, I noticed I'm a rather political guy, and I noticed that the three states that were mentioned all are pretty heavily Republican. Is there something about that? Is there anything political why this should appeal to people in red states over blue states? Or could you know, go to Illinois or New York or California as well?
Well, I think Arthur can get into the new federal tax credit program, which basically every state can opt into. So it could be anywhere going forward. And I think I would say, Richard, it's been in the states that we're in, maybe less about politics and more about just seeing the need and seeing the opportunity that's out there versus any particular political movement.
So you don't see a limit, for example. There isn't a reason a Republican governor should like this as opposed to a Democratic. I mean, it's apolitical.
We think so. We believe so. We think it should be for sure. When you look around and see the need, that the need for opportunity and to these families and these students is pretty much universal.
Yeah, the need for
Yeah,
a child to have a good education, I don't think is based on their political affiliation as well.
correct.
Absolutely.
And
Go
oh, go
ahead,
ahead,
Art.
Greg.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is not a liberal or conservative issue. Helping a family escape generational poverty by empowering them with a quality education is not only apolitical, but it transcends all lines, all boundaries, all demographics. And that's the beauty of our mission, is that there is a place for everybody under the mantle of Arete's mission and vision. And so, we don't look at or anything of that nature politically. Certainly, there are different parties that have trended, to your point, towards supporting more policies of this nature. But this is for everybody. And what we've seen actually in the last several years now is an awakening of sorts between conservatives and liberals, Democrats, and Republicans, where more people are rallying around this issue because they see it as a child-centric issue, a poverty-centric issue that does not is not a political issue, and which is refreshing. It's exciting, but there's also a lot more opportunity that exists out there, certainly in states that maybe traditionally or blue or purple states.
Well, I also think Greg put it well, which is that every parent, regardless of their party, wants to see their kid do well, and that's not something that has a label on it. That's something that goes way beyond it. But Greg also mentioned, and you've brought it up a few times in different ways about the tax credit. That's something about your program which I think is really unique and different. At least it was to me. I hadn't heard about it until very recently. Could you explain the tax credit system and how this works, how this benefits your program, how this helps kids?
Yeah, Greg, do you want to take it just maybe from a business leader perspective, and then I can tackle it from some other perspectives?
Sure. The program kind of state by state is usually a little bit different, and if we need to, Arthur can get into that, and maybe the new federal tax credit program as well. Some of the distinctives from there. What we found here in Georgia, Richard, it's a program here. It's got a limitation on the budget for the year. Arthur, are we at 120 million
120 million. Yep.
And
of
that's for everybody. That's for all tax credits. Not,
That's right.
That's
Yeah,
yeah.
all income tax credits in the state of Georgia for individuals, corporations may participate in this. And our focus on need-based really was our differentiator from some of the other scholarship organizations that are out there and doing good work. But it really opened up the door because we were setting parameters around it for corporate donors to give. Because if a scholarship income, a tax credit scholarship could go to my children or someone else that has the means to move around or pay tuition, then we weren't really hitting the highest need, particularly with a small budget of 120 million. That may sound like a lot of money. I live in a county, one of the largest counties here in Georgia. The public school budget for our county is $3.5 billion
Come on.
annually. So $120 million for the entire state is a very, very small amount in the grand scheme of what's going on here in Georgia. But so that's why we said, hey, we've got to focus this on the folks that need it the most.
Right.
And so we put our own parameters around it originally with free and federal lunch program as part of the basis. I think that's what's kind of set us apart here. Louisiana is a little bit different. Arthur, I'll let you get into that again if we need to. But here in Georgia, the demand for taxpayers is extremely high, to put it mildly. On January 1 of just about every year, that tax credit is extinguished on the first day of the year.
Used up, everyone.
Completely used up. So there's a lot of demand for it. People see the need, and look, they're paying the taxes either way. This just allows them to direct it towards this program to help those in need.
So let's explain this a little bit better. I'm a major corporation in Georgia. I don't know, maybe I make soft drinks. I don't know, something like that. And the way I'm getting this is I have a tax liability, right, that I have to pay as a corporation. Explain to me now how that would work for me. How does that work?
Mhm.
How does that help you? How does it help the kids? How does it help the corporation?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that. So this is one of those rare, win-win-win type situations. It truly is, and we have historical data and a lot of great precedent to be able to substantiate that. But to your question, here's how it works. So if there happens to be a certain company in Georgia, like you said, that makes a soft drink or flies a certain plane or whatever it may be, you have this income tax liability that you owe to Georgia. And this is true for tax credits in just about any other state that we're talking about here. So if I have a state income taxes that I need to pay, I'm already paying that to the state. But now I have a choice. As a taxpayer, whether individual, business owner, or corporate, I have a choice. And that choice is simply this. Do I want to write that check to the Department of Revenue in my state? Or do I want to utilize the autonomy and the power to say, you know what, I'd like to direct my tax dollars to children that are in significant financial need, families that are in a really tough situation, and that want what every parent wants, which is to give their kid not only a better education, but better opportunities in life. So as a business now, I can direct those tax dollars through Arete Scholars. We create scholarships and award it to those families. And then obviously, as we talked about, the parent takes it to the school of their choice for their kids. But in return, as a taxpayer, I get not a deduction, not a reduction of your taxable income, but a true dollar for dollar elimination through a tax credit on your tax liability. So if I owe $100,000 and I donate $100,000 in Georgia, I now owe the state of Georgia nothing. And what's beautiful is that not only do I, through my corporate social impact that I want to create, or my philanthropy and my vision that I have of being civically involved as a corporation, not only does it fulfill that, and not only is it no cost to me, which is wonderful, but then in conjunction with that, you have not only the benefit to the family, but actually to the state. Georgia and Louisiana, there are fiscal notes that you can pull where it actually saves the state money. So it's actually not a cost to the state budget, it's a cost savings, which is absolutely powerful. So the more kids benefit from this program, the more cost savings it is to those states.
Is there a limit to how much that you could designate to Arete? If I own if
It,
I owe $100,000, can I designate $100,000 to you, or is there a limit?
it's all based on the state and then based on the giving entity. So in Georgia, there
Huh.
are limits. Greg mentioned how there's a $120 million cap overall in the program. Again, sounds like a lot. Within 24 hours, you have over 200 million requested for a $120 million program. So there is significant demand for taxpayers that want to participate in this, but the cap is so low. So we need to move that up. But based on the giving entity in Georgia, you can only give up to a certain amount, right? And then in Louisiana, it's uncapped. It's uncapped. You can give whatever amount that you would owe to the state of Louisiana, which is really powerful. In Alabama, there are some caps as well, similar to Georgia. Yeah, it really depends on the state, and then it depends on the giving entity what amount you can give.
Why wouldn't any giving entity want to do this? Why wouldn't anyone want to direct where their money goes to, as opposed to running some department they don't even know exists? Why I don't understand, like, why anyone or any state would say no.
It's an awareness issue, honestly. I think too often people just don't know this is out there. And so when you're looking at CPAs and CFOs and senior tax people, those tax laws are changing constantly, right? And their knowledge has to be a mile wide and a foot deep. So our job, it's incumbent upon us, and truly through opportunities like this, to be able to spread that knowledge and share that wealth of wisdom to say, hey, did you know this exists? Did you know this is
But
out
how do you
there?
do that?
It's, I mean, it's through CPAs, it's through,
Yeah.
wealth advisors, it's through corporate contacts that we have. It's through people like you and Greg and others that are just simply saying, hey, did you know? Did you know this is out there?
And we're talking
And
about corporations, but as an individual, I could do the same.
Absolutely.
you can, and I'll kind of tie those two things together. Part of this, Richard, you can imagine for individuals, couples, it almost sounds a little too good to be true, right? So it sometimes can take several conversations to kind of fully explain it, and for folks to get it. We're not all tax experts. That's
Sure.
and so it takes a minute sometimes to really get our heads around it. And as a school board member, it took us a couple years to really feel like we could participate in the program and understand it and feel good about it, just because it does seem a little bit too good to be true.
So talk to me about this. Okay, we just did it from the corporate side, we did it from the tax side, we did it from the taxpayer side. Talk to me about it from the kid side. So I'm a kid, I don't know, I'm in eighth grade in some public school. How do I get engaged in this? How do I get involved?
One of the most powerful parts about our mission, when you look back over 15 years, is that our marketing budget is nearly zero, right? And here's why: because when you look across the nonprofit world, the gold standard for nonprofits is that 15 to 20% is going towards operating your program. The other 80 to 85% is going towards your programmatic cost, but sometimes that includes your fundraising cost, right? Not Arete. So we run our entire program on 5%. So 95 cents of every dollar go into these scholarships. Within
Okay.
the 5% that we keep for operations, that's not just simply funding, operations. That's our marketing costs. That's our event costs. That's the holistic programs that we talked about. We've been funding it through that as well. So as I tell people, we don't run it lean and mean. It really just kind of feels mean sometimes. But that's a point of pride for us, right? We're doing a
Sure.
lot with a little. So yeah, all that to be said, it really it's powerful how we're able to leverage that and to do a lot of good with the restraints that we do have.
So how do I qualify? So I'm sitting in my classroom and I have all these dreams about what I want to do with my future, and my parents do too. How do I engage with you?
Mm. Yeah, and to go back to your previous question, the way people engage, it's been word of mouth, right? So again, over the past 15 years, very little marketing budget. It's people in the community talking about this program, and that's how that demand is driven through the peer-to-peer, people in the community. And so people apply directly to us at Arete. It's really a turnkey operation. So we qualify the family based on financial need, what prior school they may be in. We qualify them and award them. We are coordinating with the schools, with the family, the state agencies, for reporting and compliance and transparency. So it's really, again, we're really the hub. People find us, and we do the rest from there. And it's been a really great recipe for success.
So how many applications do you get? How many scholarships are you able to give out?
Yeah, I
I'm sorry,
wish I
I'm
would have
really I'm
refilled.
really bread and butter on
I
this
wish I would
stuff.
have refilled my coffee
Great,
before.
great.
Just thinking about the amount of scholarships that we award and the number of applications we receive, I feel like I need another shot of espresso just thinking about those numbers. But it's powerful. Look, we've grown substantially, especially over the past several years, and that's really due to people like Greg and our great community leaders. But also the demand that's out there. I mean, you see the need, the cost of living, the cost of expenses that have gone up dramatically over the past several years. But we just this school year alone, we received over 5,500 applications. We awarded 3,700 families with these life-changing scholarships, and had to turn away kids. Right? I mean, we're committed to providing $15 million this school year alone, and it's still not enough. Right? The demand is so strong from these families in the communities that we serve. But yeah, we process a lot of applications and we award a lot of kids, and it's we obviously are very proud and excited to do that.
That's great. I know what some of the people listening are going to say. Some of the people are going to come back to me and say, because I've heard this for years about different types of schools, doesn't this siphon off some of the smartest kids, some of the kids who should go to their local school because they'll help lift everyone else up? Not necessarily their responsibility, but how do you respond to people who say that this is really a method of getting the smartest kids out of the public schools into private schools?
I'll start. I'm sure Arthur has some thoughts on that. I think, first of all, Richard, just again, the size of this program compared to, an entire state is very, very small. Arthur said it, we wish it was larger because there are kids that need the opportunity. And again, these are families where the children need a smaller environment. They may need some character training, they need virtue training, whatever the case may be, and they just don't have that opportunity. We see a lot of other options out in school marketplace for those that can homeschool. There's hybrid schools. We see a lot of growth, in different options, just so that there's a menu for people. So Arthur mentioned before when we were talking a little bit about competition, it tends to raise the bar in the public school and others in the services they're providing. I think Florida is the best example of that.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very large program there, over $1 billion. And all of the public schools, charter schools around these partner schools, private schools that are in Florida, they've all gotten better. They've all improved. And so
It
rising
lifts all
tide
boats.
floats all boats, rises
Yeah.
all boats in this case. And so that's what we see on the research.
But
Yeah, and I would
isn't there an inherent assumption that private is better than public built into this?
not. Yeah, not at all. Not at all. That's a fair question, but there are two things I'll say because I want to go back to your previous question. But no, we believe, as we said earlier, that a private school, by its very nature of being private or non-public or having a tuition cost, does not make it better. It's about choice. It's about finding the best fit for that child, right? And so we know there are tremendous public schools out there. And Greg said it earlier, we're the greatest champions of public schools. And the reason why is because we're the greatest champions of whatever a quality education looks like for every child. That is who we are. That's what we champion. That's why we exist. It's just trying to ensure that every child has that and every parent has that choice. So whether that's homeschool, a micro school, charter school, traditional public or parochial, we want to ensure that every kid has access to that. But then to go back to something you said about the kids maybe coming in that are smarter, skimming the cream off the top, if you will, nothing could be further from the reality of the fact that many of our kids that are getting our scholarship and coming into an Arete partner school oftentimes are actually behind academically, whether it's a grade, 2 grade levels or more. These kids are coming in and they're struggling. They're struggling, but that's where the magic happens because our schools are leaning in. Our schools are nurturing that child and helping that child academically. That's where Arete is helping provide additional resources around tutoring and literacy support to help lift that child up and accelerate their learning to get them not only back to grade level, but hopefully to exceed that and to be able to do extremely well. But many times these kids are actually behind academically. And the only criteria that we look at is not grades. We never look at their grades ever. It's purely need. What kind of need is this family in and how can we lift them up?
That's great. I really appreciate it. Thank you for that answer because that's something I know people are going to ask me. We could go on for a long time on this because I find it fascinating. I know people who are listening, but Greg, I'm going to get yelled at from people if I don't ask you a couple Atlanta Falcon questions. So
Sure.
if you don't mind, I have to admit that I am a huge fan of two of your quarterbacks over the years, the Matt Ryan and my fellow Virginia Wahoo, Matt Schaub. Um,
Oh, yeah.
so, always follow them. Look, I know it's off to a little bit of a rocky start. How do you turn it around?
Yeah, well, first you have great taste in quarterbacks. Those two guys are great. They both live here in our community. They're both still really engaged with us and love both those guys. Matt Ryan just went in our Ring of Honor last year, and he's doing a great job on CBS Sports. I'm sure you guys enjoy watching him and just hearing his knowledge that just pours out of him is incredible. Yeah, so the NFL's up and down. Last week we had a really big win on Sunday Night Football. One of the largest crowds that's ever watched that in week two. Over 21 million people watched that game, and we played great and won the game. And then this yesterday, all my days start running together during the season. Not so good. So on Mondays, it's always Tell the Truth Monday. We're taking a hard look, and we've got to bounce back. And it's a long season, Richard. So that's where I'm about to hop off to from here and
Right.
go and try to help figure out how do we get ready to win against the Washington Commanders next Sunday.
Well, I appreciate your especially taking time today. Let me just ask one very quick question because this has been bothering me. It's more about college than pros. How does NIL, how does that change everything where people are making so much money at such a young age? And you look at even a basketball star, right? Caitlin Clark not coming out
Yep.
because you could make more money in college than the pros. How does that affect a team like the Falcons?
Yeah, you ask a big question there with with not a lot of time to go here, but
Well, we
it,
could come
it is
back another
very
time.
it's very impactful both on the college game and the pro game, Richard. It's a great question. So, in some ways, we're seeing players come out of college a lot more knowledgeable about marketing, about PR, certainly about finances. We see that, and then there's a little bit of difference. And because players are starting to move around, some of our coaches would say players aren't coming out, particularly some different positions, not as polished
Hmm.
because the college coaches are afraid if they get really hard coaching, then their players may leave. And so there's definitely pros and cons that come out of it. When you talk to college athletic directors, and we do, they've been coming to us and they want to know how do we generate more revenues for NIL and for our departments. How do we manage a salary cap? Because that's basically what they have now. What percentage do we give to quarterbacks? What percentage of our money do we give to the defensive line, et cetera? And so you see more and more colleges now that have general managers and more scouts than what they had before. So it's really becoming a miniature version of the NFL in a lot of ways, and there's good and bad that come out of that.
Well, thank you. Look, both these topics we could talk for days, and I would like to, but I promised that we would get you off in time, so we will. I'm going to ask one last question. So I'm sitting at home, I'm listening to this. How do I get involved with Arete? If I'm a company, how do I get involved? If I'm an individual, how do get involved? What do I need to do to get this in my state? How do I get more money into the program?
Go ahead and take it,
Sure.
Arthur.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Best
just
question
simply
you're ever going to
going.
get.
That's right. Yeah. No,
You did that.
I think one of the greatest testimonials that exist are right there in our website. The how to get involved is right there in our website. It's kind of the Bible of Arete, if you will,
I
is just
enjoyed
simply
watching the ones
going.
of your students. I watched one of Matthew. I'm on a Matthew thing today, but Matthew Dormus, I think his name is.
Yeah, he's great.
There's greatness in the Matthews. Yeah, Matthew Dormus, one of our Arete graduates of the year, is just a phenomenal kid and a great example of opportunity colliding with potential, and Arete being at the epicenter of that. But going to our website, aretescholars.org, there's so much great information about not just the way to get involved with our program and to help support kids, but the fruits of that, right? To see the impact that's transpired in kids' lives and communities around you over 15 years. And we're excited for the next 15 years.
Well, congratulations on all you've done to this point. Thank you for what you've done for all these students. Thank you for being on Unconventional Times. I've really appreciated it. I've enjoyed getting to know both of you. You've been very generous with your time, and I appreciate it. So remember, stay unconventional. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take
You
care.
bet. You bet. So let me just finish in closing. If you take anything away from today's program, I hope that it will be that there are many ways for kids to learn and many ways to support our students. And there's not one way. I think Greg said it earlier. There's not one way that works for all kids or one size for everybody. Giving parents a choice, a true choice about their kids' education, is a good thing. It's a good thing for everybody. I mean, we heard that today. We heard this discussion. Arthur, commented how much this helps public schools, not just private schools, and that's important. But there can't be a choice if people can't afford it. And Arete Scholars changes that model and changes that paradigm. It solves that problem because there is not a true choice if people can't afford it. It's only a choice for the wealthy, and that's not right. So look into this program. I think it's terrific. I learned about it recently. That's why they're guests on our show today. I hope you'll do the same. So I hope you will. I'm going to change the topic very quickly because something I need to say in a completely different vein. Look, we all saw that Robert Redford died this week. You're probably wondering why I'm talking about this. But here's a guy who is not just a great actor, but a great man, and a man who lived his principles and his ideals. When I was a kid, he went door to door in my neighborhood in support of a guy who was running for Congress. And that's kind of why I'm talking about this. People stayed home just in the hope that Robert Redford would ring their doorbell and show up. And I was fortunate to have met him a few years ago. I was invited to the premiere of his son's documentary on transplants. And I jumped into the elevator only to realize that inside the elevator was Robert Redford, his son, and his whole family. I was the only non-Redford in the elevator, and to say the least, it was really uncomfortable and awkward because I think they were all talking about something. They stopped when I got in, and suddenly Robert Redford reached into his pocket, pulled out a little box, reached over to me, and said, "Altoid?" I took a mint. We all laughed, and the ice was broken. Well, that's it for today's show. Please listen to us wherever you get your podcasts and watch us on YouTube at YouTube at UT dash Richard Gordon. YouTube at the letter U, the letter T dash Richard Gordon. Thank you for joining us. It's great having you with us. We look forward to your joining us again in the future. And remember, stay unconventional.
You've been listening to Unconventional Times with your host, Richard Gordon. Check out all of the episodes of Unconventional Times on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Richard Gordon and all of his unconventional conversations, head on over to unconventionaltimes.com. Thanks for listening.